That's how I view the coaching is I have to find out what they struggle with and then really help them get better at that because they want to get better at it. They just don't know how to. And me telling them doesn't do any good. What
Mm,
helps is demonstrating and then helping them build up that part of it and just working with it over and over and over. And people buy Mercedes or Lamborghinis, and yeah, they're really nice cars. If all you're looking for is to get from point A to point B, you can buy any kind of car, right? But they see the value in paying a whole lot more money for them. And most of us pay more than we probably need to because there's a value we have in that car. Insurance still works the same way. Every single product in the world works the same way. You have to prove why your value is there. And that is at the essence what we're trying to coach the team.
how do you get everyone on your team to deliver consistent experience without sounding scripted? Because giving them knowledge is one thing, delivery is something else. Hey Bill, how's it going, my friend?
It's going great. Michael, how are you?
Can't complain, living the dream one day at a time. This is my new, new
Well,
saying.
you can complain. Nobody's listening anyway, so it doesn't do you
That
much
is
good, right?
that is true. Look, I'm super excited having you on, because I consider you as a coach, and you've been in the seat for many many years as a seller, as a leader. So this conversation is going to be around coaching our teams. But before we get started, we want to get to know you a little bit more. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, what you're working on these days?
I started off as a CPA a long time ago, late '80s actually. So I've been around for a while. I was a CPA, and I actually met my wife there. My wife is named Diane. She was my boss at work. She was 1 year older than me, which made her my boss. And then we got married, and the joke was she's his boss permanently, which is pretty much true, you know. So we started off working together, and then we both got different careers. About 24 years ago, I decided I was tired of somebody telling me why a 2% raise was good, because the whole raise pool was only 1.5%. So somebody else made less, and you were getting that. So I went into sales, and I moved into sales, and you know took me a little while to figure it out. I love to talk and everything, but sales, I needed good coaching. I needed good mentors to help me learn how to do it, and I did, and I really enjoyed sales. Several years ago, Diane, my wife, we're still married, obviously, but we acquired an insurance agency. We decided to test our marriage of about 25 years at that point in time to see if we could keep it going with a new business together. And so I'm happy to report several years later, we're still married. So that's a good thing. We have a daughter who is 24 years old, but we acquired our agency about 4 years ago. I've been in insurance sales for over 25 years. Uh, Decided with my wife to acquire an agency about 4 years ago. So with that comes, we're expanding rapidly. We have grown triple in size in the last 4 years and are looking to continue to do that growth. And so we've had to bring on more and more people, and a key part of what we do with them is coach them. And I've learned a whole lot of lessons because I've been coached before. I was an individual contributor for years, and coaching brings on a whole new set of challenges, which is what we've been focusing on the last few years. And we're always learning stuff. I have coaches for me. I have a COO in our office. We get trained too because we think you can always get better at something. And so that's really where we're at right now is just trying to build our agency up with the best possible people we can find.
I love it. Look, again, that's growth mindset. Regardless of, how many years you've been in the seat, you can always, do better and get better. And
Hmm.
by the way, we share the same sentiment. I have my boss, so my wife is my co-founder too, as you may know. So I
Yes.
think, yeah, we both tested our marriage, and it seems like it's been working.
Well, within a month, my wife, because I said at first, we got to drive together because we have about a 20-mile drive to get to our office. And I said, we're going to save money because there's tolls and everything. We're going to drive together. She didn't really like that idea. But within about 3 weeks, we were driving separately because we decided we needed a time apart and we needed to be able to leave when we wanted to leave. I like to work later a lot of times. So we've made accommodations for that, and we try real hard not to talk about work while we're at home. That doesn't happen very often. I mean, we do talk about it, but you have to separate the two. Otherwise, you just become a work relationship all the time, and
That is true.
it's balancing. And I'm sure you've had challenges with that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's get into it. So, when you think about developing your team, what does coaching actually look like day to day for you?
I'm going to talk about how I originally started because I made a lot of mistakes when I first started. I used to think coaching was we have a talk path for them. I go through the talk path, do a little bit of role play, and then I let them go. And then I would get frustrated with them, and a lot of times I'd let them see it. And I kind of forgot. Somebody pointed out to me at one point in time, "Hey, you weren't always a great salesperson, even though I like to think I'm a great salesperson." She said, "You aren't," and it was actually my COO, Brooke. She said, "You weren't always great. You needed help to get there, and you needed somebody to tell you how to get there." I said, "No, I was pretty smart, but I knew what she was saying, but I didn't know how to do it really, because I had always just coached them, and I thought once I tell them how to do something, I show them how to do it, they should have it, and they never need another bit of coaching again, or periodically I do it. And then what I would find is within a few weeks, they might do great for a month, they might even do great for 2 months, but then their numbers would start going down. And my reaction was to get frustrated, and it was a mistake I made, and I didn't do it on purpose, but I would basically just say, "What's wrong with you? Why can't you do this?" I try to say it a nicer way than that, but you know they didn't know how to fix it, and I just expected them to be able to know how to fix it. So I think the mistakes I made originally was I didn't really understand what coaching was all about, right? And I kind of think about pro athletes, and this is the example I use with all of my team. Tiger Woods, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, names that we've all heard of, they all have coaches. Nobody could touch Tiger Woods on the golf course. He beat the best players in the world. And yet over his career, I think he had 3 or 4 coaches, right? And it was because he could not always spot, as good as he was, where he was off. Maybe his hip was pulling out and he was hitting the ball a little bit to the right. And he probably could do that and figure it out eventually. I'm sure he could because he was Tiger Woods, but he had a coach that could get him there a lot faster. And I tell my team, look, we use coaches. I use coaches because I need somebody that could just give me feedback and help me stay on track, right, when I get off. And the very best in any profession in the world has coaches. And so that's kind of where I've come around to is I need to consistently and constantly be coaching my team to help get them get to where they want to go.
Really love this, Bill. You know why? Because what you're talking about is about accountability as a leader. He said, "Look, I didn't know how to coach, properly, and I turned to, someone who tells them the mistakes with an expectation that they're going to pick it up and do better." But to your point, it seems like the shift happened when you started understanding your, individuals in front of you, and let them actually think and figure out how they could do better. It was very interesting. I recorded another episode with a CRO, and he's been in the seat for a long time. And he said, "Look, there is a difference between telling, training, and coaching. So telling could be something like, 'Why don't you update your CRM?' Training, this is how you update your CRM. Go do it. Coaching would be what's stopping you from actually updating the CRM to understand what's going on in their world. So we have context and then we can show them the how to. I really love that. So it seems like again because you got into the leadership seat and you had to coach your LSPs and your agents. Um, you naturally had to actually switch from being a seller, to being a coach. Tell us a little bit about that journey. Did you get any trainings, or how did you actually learn how to coach?
Yeah, I don't know if I had training specifically on coaching, but I watched a lot of coaches because I hired coaches in our agency. So my first reaction was, I need to pay somebody to do this. So I hired people and I'd watch them. And it was sometimes outside services. There's some really good companies out there that specialize in our industry, which, as I said, is insurance. And they would coach and they would have the same message. The problem was, they weren't full time in our office, so they weren't working there. So the message would get to the team, but they'd forget about it. And you need more of a constant. Let's talk about it, and let's have for the people in office. Sometimes I just run into them at the coffee machine, and I ask them about a certain call or how something went, or what's going on with them, and I can just give them a quick little tip on that sort of stuff. But um, so I started watching other people and I just started making a lot of mistakes, to tell you the truth. I try this and it doesn't work. I try that, it doesn't work. But I really just kind of let my natural instincts start taking over after a little while because I thought, how would I want to be coached? How would I want to be talked to? And originally we gave them, and we still do this, we gave them goals and we said, you'll be successful if you do this. As a number of items sold per day, a number of quotes per day, an amount of dial time, and an amount of dials, because we make a lot of outbound calls. I said, if you just do that, you'll be fine. What I learned was that's not really coaching, right? That's just giving them, these are the parameters to go around it. And I thought, well, they'll figure it out. They got the talk path. They know how many dials they have to make. They know how many conversations they have to have, and they would do it. And sometimes they would do it with just sheer will because they were excited but they weren't getting any better. And you can't do this business forever if you never get better, because you cannot keep up the volume that some of them were doing early on. So I had to help them get more effective at it. What I realized is each of them had their strengths and their weaknesses. I give you an example. In our business, people don't have the right insurance oftentimes, and the biggest thing is liability. And I won't bore you with all the details of it, but the best way we can help them understand why this is such an important component of their insurance is with a story. And we have a lot of stories that have actually happened to people in our agency, or their spouses, and some pretty big accidents that have cost hundreds of thousands of dollars through no fault of their own, but they were on the hook for it. And because they had the right insurance, or maybe they didn't have the right insurance, they either had to pay for it all themselves or the insurance company covered it up. So I would tell everybody, you got to tell a story. You got to tell a story. And I would tell them, here's a great story. It happened to Michelle. She's in our office. It happened to her husband. And it's still my favorite story of all because it kind of covers everything. But I would tell it to them one time, maybe two times. And I always told the stories a little bit different. Um, and I'd say, just use that story. It works. It gets the point across. It's what I use when I sell. and then I let them go, right? I think this is great. They got the story. I've done my job for the day. They've got the story. Well, a little while ago, I knew people weren't telling the same story. So I reached out to each of my team members individually. There's about 10 of them right now that are on the sales side. And I said, tell me your story. And I just heard a wide range of stories. They were not good. They weren't, and some were, one or two were good, but I had people telling 4-minute stories. I had people using very technical insurance terms. I had people that couldn't remember the story and were kind of like going backwards and saying, wait a minute, I forgot to tell you about this. So it was just like, okay, you, I, I assumed they knew how to tell stories, right? I like to tell stories. I assume everybody has the way of telling stories. What I found out is that's not the case, because we think because we can do it, everybody can do it. They all have their strengths, but it may not be the same strengths that I have. So I have to figure out what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses. So what I did is, as they were telling me the story, I just went into Chat GPT and I just typed in all facts as I could get them. And then I had Chat GPT write me a 60-second story. And then I just took it back to them and I said, here's the story. And they're like, this is really good. I said, now you practice this. And if you have to read it, you want to put emphasis on it. And the more you tell that story, the better you're going to get at it. And it's incredible because now they're all comfortable telling the story. Right. But I never knew that. I spent a couple of years just saying, tell a story, tell a story. Why aren't they telling a story? And it wasn't until I started asking them questions and started having them demonstrate to me how they're telling the story in a non-threatening way that I realized they didn't know what they were doing, right? And there are lots of different instances of that, but that story just shows you, as I realized I really had to step back and make sure that just because I thought they should get it based on what I told them, I had to make sure that they actually got it, right? And the thing you got to remember with all of them is they want to succeed. Okay.
Hmm.
They all come in and they are all chomping at the bit and they want to do a really good job and everything, but they just don't know how to succeed. Right. And that's our job as coaches, is to find out where their weaknesses are, help them really accentuate their positives because they all have it, but then make their weaknesses so they're at least average in that part. Right. And that's how I view the coaching is I have to find out what they struggle with and then really help them get better at that because they want to get better at it. They just don't know how to. And me telling them doesn't do any good. What
Hmm.
helps is demonstrating and then helping them build up that part of it and just working with it over and over and over until it just becomes automatic to them.
You know what I like about this a lot? It starts with getting to know each individual personally, because everyone's different, and we should drop the assumption, as you said it, like, hey, I think everybody can tell this story, but really, do they? until you really get into the weeds of it and let them say it a few times and understand, what's missing. And last but not least, you're leveraging technology to build that unified messaging across the board so everyone can tell the story same way, as strong as possible, and they don't get confused because, okay, this is 60 seconds. Let's everyone practice it. Based on what you collected, from the team, you came up with a message that is unified and is working for you. Look, you're really good at telling stories. Like, since I got to know you, I heard a lot of, again, great examples. For those who might not be so good at telling stories and listening to this and they want to apply it for their teams, can you tell us one or two, stories that you really like and it's really powerful and work for your team?
Well, I don't know if they're powerful or not, but I do like to tell them.
Go for it.
One of them is we have to sell on value. Insurance is most people think that, hey, I just have to have the state limits. I just have to have the minimum stuff and everything. So they're all very price conscious. They think of it as a commodity, which before I got into insurance, I thought the same thing. Right. And I said, we have to sell on value. And I kept preaching, sell on value, sell on value. And, we all have stories like this, but I tell the story to everybody in our this. Diane and I were out shopping one day, and we just went to a Bed Bath and Beyond or one of those kinds of stores, and we needed some towels. Um, Diane was looking at the towels. I was looking at the towels. I'd like to touch things. I like to see how they feel and everything. And Diane says, "Here, I got the towels. We can go now." I said, "Well, I like this towel," and it wasn't the color or anything. It was just really soft. So I grabbed mine, and then I grabbed hers. I said, I like this towel." Diane said, "Those are like $30 more, $40 more." And I said, "Yeah, well, you can buy those towels, but I'm buying these towels for me, right?" And that to me was the value, is that the towel at the end of the day does what? It dries your body off after you get out of the shower, right? And they all work just fine. But I was willing to pay extra because I was picturing myself having that comfort of that towel for the 30 seconds or a minute that I'm using it, while I'm doing that. And I said, I'll pay $30 extra for it. And that to me was value. And that's, Diane ended up buying the same towels for both of us, and she was actually very happy that we got those nice towels and everything. But it's we have to be able to sell on value, and it's trying to get them to see a really simple story, about how value can really play out, and then equate that to what the insurance is. So we do drills in our office about what value do we add, right? And a lot of times I say, what is your best value that you have? And I'm always waiting for them to say, it's me, not me, them, each
Mhm.
individual person, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, our product's good, so is everybody else's product, but the fact that we are going to educate you, they are the value. So once they start getting that, then they have to believe it in their head, and then their whole sales persona changes, because now they're believing that they are worth the time that they're spending with the people. So it started with a simple story about a towel, because I think everybody can grasp that really easily. And I say, you have to get them to want the fancier towel, the more comfortable towel.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're
Does-
basically paying for comfort, and you decided to pay for that comfort and happiness that comes with, that towel, and it doesn't matter the price because your
It
happiness.
didn't matter.
Yeah.
And some people don't want the nice towel. They want the cheapest thing possible because that's what they're going to go with. And that's fine. If we can meet them there, that's fine. I don't personally believe it's the right thing to do for them. So we don't want to start at that point in time. But I get it. There's budgets out there and people just can't do it. And sometimes we have to go down here, but then we'll offer to make sure we review it periodically to get it up there. But, my team, a lot of times people go into sales and think it's all about price, and it's all about having the most activity. Activity is important, but a lot of it is important is getting them to understand why what you are selling them or offering them is a better value for them. And that's sales everywhere, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, because people buy, Mercedes or Lamborghinis, and yeah, they're really nice cars. If all you're looking for is to get from point A to point B, you can buy any kind of car, right? But they see the value in paying a whole lot more money for them. And most of us pay more than we probably need to because there's a value we have in that car. But the pure utility of it is just to get us from point A to point B, right? And so it's that kind of thing. Insurance still works the same way. Every single product in the world works the same way. You have to prove why your value is there. And that is at the essence what we're trying to coach the team, is how do we use that to get them, how do we get them to see that value, right? And it can't be all just about numbers and and insurance facts. It's got to be about getting them to see that an accident could happen to them, and this is what the ramifications could be. That's why we tell a story, and y- we're going to coach them, and it's all that coming together. And once you do that, you have a salesperson that can really add value to the people that need it or that want it. Not everybody wants it.
This is really important. Like, this is so powerful. Like the storytelling, and also I think when we mix this with active listening and knowing our buyers, everything changes. Like you said, it. Some people are price conscious. You can do whatever you want to do. That's the budget set. They cannot even go higher. But if we really listen to them and understand, what they need, I can give you actually an example. We moved around. Like, we always travel around the world and we live in different cities. So we moved back to Canada from Latin America recently. And I started looking for dog insurance, pet insurance, because
Yep.
I would love
Yep.
my dog get insurance, because you never know. And I've seen again things that happened to my friends in the past. People might say, hey, just save, I don't know, 50, $100 per month. You're better off doing that rather than getting insurance. I completely disagree with this, because one of my friend, young dog, very healthy, accident happened, $15,000. How do you want to save $15,000? How did you predict or even prepare yourself for this? So I reached out to the major, brands that I know in Canada, send them an email, and the experience made me actually pay for the most expensive one. The coverage was almost the same, but the rep, first and foremost, he gave me a call right away. The rest, I had to wait to get an email, just wait and see what happens. Receive the call. I was like, okay, this is the positive right now. I'm talking to a human being.
Right.
And he sounded like someone who's been in the seat for long enough. I don't know if he's been or not, to be honest. But he was very confident. And at the end, he just said something really interesting. He said, look, you've been traveling around a lot, and your dog history in terms of like health or anything else might be all over the place. Most of insurance providers, they want that data. We don't care. If you go see a doctor right now, everything is going to be fine, and I'll take care of everything on the back end for you. You just tell me which one you want to go with. I tell you, send you the detail. This is premium service. I don't care if I pay $20 more a month or even $100 more.
Exactly. And pet insurance is interesting because we offer pet insurance, but people, I never even knew pet insurance existed until about 5 years ago. But people will talk about their pets a lot, and they will pay to make their pets. And I wish I'd had it. I didn't have to use it, but I had a cat a long time ago, and yeah, I love animals. And we had a cat, and they had to do some kind of, they had to put him under, and they said, if 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 something happens and his heart stops, do we have your permission to restart the heart? I said, oh yeah, sure. And then they said it'll cost about $1,500 if we do that. And I was like, do I really want to pay $1,500 for a cat? But this is why you want insurance, I mean, I said yes, he was fine. They didn't need to do it, but I mean, it gets expensive with animals. But you love your animals, right? And it's hard to, you want to do whatever you can for them. So that is a great story. But going back to the value thing, yeah, somebody treats you really well, you're willing to pay a little bit extra. If it's $1,000 more for 6 months, I don't expect them to be able to sell that. But if it's $20 or $30 a month, I'm hoping we add at least that much value to
Yeah.
make it worthwhile.
Would it be fair to say in your space, the LSPs or the agents in the front line is the differentiation, or there are
Yes.
other factors?
Well, for the most part. Now, some people just want to go online because the world is getting there, but they get zero value add. They get zero, they don't know if they're getting the right stuff or not. So what we typically find is that after a certain age, or once people get a certain amount of assets, they get more concerned, they want help. So the agents can absolutely be, they can make a huge difference. Because they are educating. If you work with a good agent, he'll educate you, he'll answer your questions, and you'll understand what you're buying. Now, when I first bought the agency, I was not a PNC expert at that point in time. And so somebody was talking to me about the different kinds of insurance in the office.
Mm.
And I was like, wait a minute, that does what again? Yeah. And it was just because nobody knows this. It's a very technical product. Even though we think we all know it, nobody knows it. So the agent's job in our office is really to be able to, not assume they don't know anything, but basically assume they don't know anything, and then ask them the right questions to figure out what they do know. And most people don't know much. And then we have to explain it to them in ways that they can understand it. That goes back to the story. But yeah, they are incredibly important to the process because it can change people's impressions of insurance agents,
Mhm.
Just and there are good ones out there and there are bad ones out there, just like any other profession in the world. And through coaching, I'm trying to get them. You know, the other thing about coaching is I have a lot of years of experience. I mean, I've been around for a long time. I've bought several houses. I've had claims. I've replaced 7 or 8 roofs in my time. I've seen everything. I've had accidents. I've had to file claims. I have a lot of people in my office that are between 25 and 35. Okay. I mean, it's a great place for those kinds of people. They don't have the experience of
Mhm.
life, and they just haven't had the time to get it. Many of them haven't bought their first home yet or just bought it, and they have no idea what's in store for them. A lot of them have kids that are in the first couple of years, and you learn so much during that time period. So part of what I'm trying to also do is transfer some of the knowledge that I have to them so that they can have an educated conversation with somebody and say, here's really what the risks are. This is why it's important that you understand what your roof is covered for or whatever it is. And we want to explain that to people because, people just don't know if they're covered or not. And sometimes we find the last insurance agent didn't cover them properly, and they were lucky they didn't have a claim, because they
Mhm.
would not have gotten what they thought they were getting. So that's what I try to teach them is make sure they totally understand this. And then we'll come back in 6 months to a year and we'll do a review with them because I don't expect people to retain this for very long. I mean, we need to be reminded about this kind of stuff periodically.
Look, it was this study, I forgot from whom, said look, 70% of buyers, regardless of industry, they want sales less experience because we got Amazon, we got even Tesla. You can go buy your car online, right? So the buyer mindset is shifting regardless of
Hmm.
what we say or do. But same study said, and 20 or 30% of those guys who actually did self-serve, bought their product or service, regretted the decision because it was a really costly decision. So again, we used to be really focused on selling to software companies and technology companies, IT companies. And I always say this: my buyer, if it's a CFO or a CRO or someone in the seat who actually signed the check, they're older people and they've been through a lot and they know the cost of making wrong decisions. Yes, with AI everybody thinks like the whole world will collapse or it's a big transformation and humans are not going to be involved. I would say part of a process might get automated, but at the end of the day it's about that human trust.
Hmm.
Is there something that I cannot find on the website or by Google search that as an expert in your space? Plus, even if I can do the research and find out, there's always something that because you're doing this 24/7 and I don't do it. I'm not from insurance. So I want you to educate me and tell me about the mistakes that I might actually make if I go on my own. And I think that's the value of a good, salesperson as a practitioner rather than someone who just take order or walk through the script. And speaking of again sounding scripted, I wanted to get your thoughts on how do you get everyone on your team to deliver consistent, experience without sounding, scripted? Because giving them knowledge is one thing, delivery is something else.
Well, I'm going to address the first part first, then I'll come to the second. Our job as the insurance agent is to make a complex issue simple, to talk about it in terms that they can understand. I don't want to say we talk to a sixth grade level, but it is complex. And if we start using terms like bodily injury and umbrella liability, I mean, we start boring them with this and they zone out. It's human nature. You just get tired of it. So what our value is we can give them through the stories, but just through examples and through real words. We have to take a complex topic, which insurance really is more complex than people would give it credit for, and bring it down to a level that the average layperson can understand it. And that's even challenging for my team at times because when you are in an industry for a long time, you start using acronyms, you start
Lingo.
thinking everybody knows it. And I'm always like, don't say that, because they don't know what you're talking about when you say that. And they're going to think they should know that and they're not going to ask the question. So, that's the first thing is that's where the agent can really bring value is make sure people understand that. The second part of the question now, so when they first come in, we have a talk path and we ask them to just call some friends and family because we want them to be able to do quoting in a friendly environment so that, when they have to say, look, I don't know where to go next, they can say, let me call you back in 20 minutes once I get some coaching. So that's not going to sound smooth at all. And then we put them on the phones and we let them actually, and I tell them, I know you're going to make mistakes. Don't feel bad about it. Sometimes I know you're going to mess some things up. That's all part of us training you. Um, but that gives us some data to start working with, right? And then we can listen to the calls. And so what we originally did, well, we didn't do any of that at first. I just assumed they knew how to do it, and we didn't listen very much. And then I was coached, and I said, you got to listen to calls. So through our phone system, we can live listen, which we do sometimes, but that's very time consuming. Um, I would love to do that all day, but I can only do a couple of people. Even if I'm doing it all day, I got to find the right phone call that's effective, and then listen for 45 minutes. And it takes a lot of my time, and I don't have that. Neither does Brooke or anybody else in my office. So then we have recordings, right? So all of our calls are recorded, and we can listen to them for coaching purposes. So then I would listen to the calls for coaching, and that was also very challenging because I have other things to do, and that's really not my most favorite thing to do in the world. But I do it, and the team really liked it when I do it. I still do it. I just can't do it in volume, right? So our next step, I'm kind of giving you the process how we worked through. And we still use this, but we used a virtual assistant. Okay, and those are people that are typically in other countries, and they're cost effective. So we would have them listen to. That was their sole job, was to listen to the calls, listen to the recordings of the calls, and we created a rating system. And we would go through, and we had 10 key parts that we wanted them to listen to, and we'd say yes, they did it. It was a scale 1 to 10. They'd be rated on that, and then we'd give them an overall score, which was great because now that means I didn't have to listen to as many calls. I would get copies of them. I could jump in and listen to the call that was already scored, and I could hear certain parts. I could pull it out, and I could bring it onto our team huddles that we do every day, or once a week. I like to listen to a call together, but still, the volume just wasn't there. I mean, and our guy did a great job, and we're we still are keeping him even if he doesn't do as much of that because he's just a really quality teammate. Um, and that kind of brings us to where we are now, which is we're using your product, Sell Me the Pen. And what I really like about that is it listens to every call. And better yet, my team loves it because what they can do is so many different functions of it. But they love the coaching because it's virtual coaching that they can get immediately. So if they have a call that they get off of and they think, I thought I was going to get that one, what did I do wrong? They can go into it very quickly and they can get immediate feedback. They crave that kind of feedback. I didn't even realize how much because at the end of the day, like I said before, they want to succeed. They don't always know how to. And if I have a week where I'm busy and I just don't get to listen to even a single call for a particular person, they're missing that, right? I mean, and I didn't even realize that. I kind of felt sometimes it was a burden for them to talk to me because nobody wants to go and talk and be told what they did wrong all that much. But now they can get immediate feedback on it. It's not anything they have to take personal. It's just AI telling them, why don't you do this? You should have done this. Here's an idea. They can go in and they can ask questions about, what could I have done here? And they'll get feedback from it. So we've transitioned from really doing nothing to, yeah, we'll get a call when I have time or when Brooke has time to, we hired somebody just to do it. And we've also used some other systems out there where we can upload calls and they get scored on it to that. And that was all better and they kept getting better and better. And now where we're at by using this system is, they can get instantaneous feedback afterwards. And we can create personas where they are getting the coaching. And then this all goes back to the coaching. This doesn't take away my job of I still give them coaching. I still sit with them. I still review calls. I can do all that. This is on top of that because they get instantaneous and everybody uses it a little bit differently. And in a they get different things out of it. But I am seeing where they are improving. Now as you know, we haven't had it for a whole long time, but the ones that are using it consistently are getting better, stronger, and stronger. They're getting better more quickly. And it just tells me how much they want coaching because they all want to succeed. It would be unfortunate if I can't give them enough coaching just because I don't have time because of all the other things that I have to do. This is what makes it so great is now they can get that coaching when they want it as much as they want. Sometimes AI is a little bit scary, but this is an excellent use of AI as far as I can tell at this point in time.
I love it. Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, you just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me the Spend AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethespend.ai. Let me ask a question about the last part. You said AI can get scary, and you already you've been hands-on even before Sell Me the Spend. You had your GPT and most probably the team learn how to use it. Right now that you have the system, obviously you can offer more coaching, more role plays. But sometimes when you introduce tools like this, people might, get scared. It seems like this is not the case for the office, but I wanted to hear your experience. How did you introduce this tool internally to get the buy-in from your team? Are saying, hey, this is value for you?
Well, first, so I kind of did a little test balloon, and nobody, my management team didn't want me to do this, but I just checked in with a couple people. Said, "Do you think this would be? What do you think if I had something like this?" I didn't get into any details, and they said, "Oh, I think that'd be great." So I was told not to say that because we hadn't made a decision yet, and you're setting them up. But I wanted to just do a test balloon, so I at least checked it out with a couple of people that I trust and I know felt would give me good feedback. Then we brought the system on, and Brooke, who is our office or COO, is very good technically. But she started playing with it, and she wasn't afraid just to push different buttons and see what it did and everything. And she did the role playing herself, and we did that for maybe 2 weeks, I think. By the time from the time we actually did it to the time we started, and my time frame could be off a little bit, but we did it for a period of time, so that we got really good with it. And then we had a Monday morning meeting with everybody. It was our normal huddle, but we chose that day. Actually, we did the huddle first because we have a normal thing that we do with motivation and everything. And then at 9 o'clock, we held them off the phones for a little bit. That's typically when we called, and we said we are introducing this new platform, and we just showed it to them, and we told them how to use it. We spent about 45 minutes just walking through the basics of it, and then we just let it go. We said, I told them there's a cost associated with this, but we think the value is worth it because we believe that we will sell more and you guys will each get better, which means more money in your pocket, which means that we get a better return on our investment from the leads that we acquire and everything. So I said we're comfortable with that, but it's only as good as the people that use it. And then we just kind of let it go for a couple of days, and they started playing with it. And the biggest thing is there's a score in there, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm really bad at this. I only got like a 22 on that one, And then somebody else said, "I got a 54. I'm really good." But it became a little bit of a competitive nature. So we didn't really say anything about it for 2 days, other than to say, "Anybody have questions or anything?" Then we started asking questions, and they just started talking about what their thing is, and they started identifying where they were weak, and where they, you know, some of them said, "Yeah, this it said I should do this," and I went back and listened to the call, and it's right. I didn't do that. So they like the instant feedback. So I encouraged them to use it. I explained to them there was a cost, and I'd be disappointed if you didn't use it, but I couldn't make them use it. But we just let them kind of pick it up on their own. Now, what we're seeing after a little bit of time is some people use it quite a bit, especially our newer people. Some of our vets, I'm a little bit disappointed in how much they've been using it. So we're going to have conversations with it. They're using it. I just feel like they could get more out of it, and maybe they think they're farther along than they need to be. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But the ones that are using it, they're getting better. Their numbers are going up. Their sales are going up. They're getting more confident, and it's starting to make them believe that they can do this and that they're really good at it. Right. Um, so I don't know if there's any one right way to do it. My style is not to tell people you have to do this. I want to convince them why it's better for them. And as they are doing it, we're figuring out new ways that we can use it all the time. And we're working with your team to develop some of those ways. But it's been really popular in our office. I mean, they really like it. So we do make we We require, as part of being in our offices, you have to spend 15 to 30 minutes every single day doing self-development. Okay. And we
Mhm.
offer a lot of different ways they can do that. It's some of our online platforms, they can get coaching that way, but I want something to just be self-improvement. And I'm not even saying it has to be office work related, though I prefer it to be, but it could be about learning to be better time managers. It could be whatever. But that's a requirement in our office. And one of the ideas we had is use um, SMTP for role playing. Use that at least a few times a week, and that's where they're using it. And it's actually they're having fun with it, and they're comparing each other, and they're all trying to get better at it. So,
I
did I
appreciate you
answer your
sharing.
question, or did I go way
Oh,
off
no,
on?
no, no, you actually did. And you know what I'm getting from this is that it's not only about the tool and how powerful or not powerful it might be. It it's the coaching culture inside your organization. Because even without it, you were solving this problem differently. Like right now, you even said it. I got this tool. I know it's powerful. I know it's going to be real time, but I still do coaching. I'm still involved because they need the leader anyways to guide them. It's just like buying a Ferrari and you never drove before and say, I drove it and smashed it. It's a horrible car. But at the end of the day, have you ever tried to learn how to drive before, sitting in that car? It's the same thing. And I think your team has already been used to getting coached, but the nature is just changed and it's more real time.
And I also take them. I mean, sometimes I get a little frustrated because they are not getting the greatest scores and everything. I said, look, guys, that doesn't matter. And the story I use is I'm a golfer, right? And I can shoot in the 80s. So I was a good golfer, not a great golfer, but I went to a coach about 10 years ago and I said, I want to shoot. I want to get closer to breaking par or at least even par. And I said, I want to hit a draw. And he said, why? You hit the ball far. I said, yeah, but I got a natural fade. I want to know how to hit a draw, especially when I need to hit it. And every time I do it, I hit a duck hook. And for people that are golfers, know a duck hook is about the worst shot you can have. So he said, okay. And he taught me how to hit it. And, we worked on the swing and everything. And I got pretty good at it. And I said, well, I want to go out on the golf course. He said, well, I don't think you should go out on the golf course. You should practice a little bit more. I said, well, yeah, but it's boring on a range. I want to go out on the golf course. He said, okay, do not keep score. And I said, okay, but that's kind of why I play golf, is to keep scoring. I want to see if this is helping me get down to a lower score. He said, no, this is still practice. All right. We are not at the stage where you should worry about score, because if you start keeping score, you're going to forget about what we've been doing and you're going to hit the ball the way you want to hit it. And you're going to be thinking about that stuff and everything. He said, this is practice. So go out there and just pay attention to how the ball feels and everything. And I started thinking about that. We don't keep score in practice, right? Occasionally we play scrimmages and everything, but when I played sports, we didn't keep score of everything unless we were having a little competition. The game is when the score is there, and the 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 practice is for getting better at your craft. And so, I tell them, look, when you're role playing or even when you're listening to a review, consider that practice. Don't worry about the score so much. Look for where your trends are. Look for things that you can strengthen up, because if you are just focused on getting the highest score, you're not going to be focused on, well, yeah, I might be doing everything really good, but I'm not asking for the sale, right? So I might get an 80, but I'm not asking for the most important part of the thing in there. So just look for that, right? So it's getting them to understand that the score doesn't really matter right now, because this is practice. This is going to get you good. The only time we're in a game is when we're actually talking to the customer or the prospect, right? And so it's getting that mindset. And because some of them, I think, were discouraged early on because their score didn't look very good. And I told them, and I actually mentioned that story to one of them. I said, look, I was discouraged too when I was duck hooking all the time. And even when he taught me it, 2 out of every 5 were still going way to the left. But I knew I was getting better. And I said, his name is Mauricio. I said, you're getting better, right? You're not where you're ultimately going to be. But our whole office philosophy is we're to get 1% better every single day. And if we can do that, and you're getting better, so be encouraged by that and look at the positives of that, as opposed to being critical that this thing is saying, well, you're still only at a 38 out of 100. That doesn't matter. You just look for the trend to be going in the right direction. And that's where I still have to coach them, because they still don't know how to handle that kind of stuff. And we're big about positive reinforcement and everything, but they are their own worst enemies. We all are. We're all really hard on ourselves, and I have to be involved with them coaching, because I have to figure out when they're going off track. and where I can pull them back on and just have a conversation. And the conversation is, hey, you got to sell more. The conversation is, hey, look, I think you're being too hard on yourself here because there's a lot of good here, right? We do have to work on a couple of things, but there's a lot of good here. And I think most people just need to hear the encouragement, and then, you know, they know what they have to work on, but they can't see anything except that, and they become they really get hard on themselves. And that's a lot of coaching, I think. It's just, encouraging them on that side and then helping them on the side that they're not succeeding in just yet.
Bill, we can continue this conversation for hours, but I want to finish it on a high note on what you said, because to me, that translates to one thing and one thing only. We still need the human coach. Yes, we can automate the parts that are time consuming or might be biased, or we might, get tired, but that mindset shift comes through the conversations you are having with each individual. Maybe I'm worried about score. Maybe, Bill is not worried about that and he has, other issues they're dealing with. Let's understand why. This is just a tool. It's part of the process. It's like doing the calls. There are multiple things we are doing in our business, but I think this is crucial that we stay close to our team. Like some people who come to us and say, look, what you build, most probably I don't need even sales managers. I don't need trainers. I don't need to coach myself anymore. And I said, look,
Mm,
this is a very dangerous mindset, because
yeah.
you're getting very far from your team if that's the mindset. And this is just a very powerful tool. Without you, I wouldn't say this goes too far.
Yeah, I think it's a great tool. I mean, my goal this year was to get better or to really at the start of the year was just to do something in AI. So I started off small. I wrote emails, and now I'm writing articles. I'm doing scripts. I do presentations. I'm looking for ways to do trend analysis in there. I mean, I'm learning, and I actually. You guys reached out to me, and we've had this conversation about just tell it. And I was hoping, I didn't know what the product was. Um, I didn't really know, the email didn't say a whole lot, and I just responded back to it because my whole goal was to learn about AI, and I was hoping it'd be something to what it ultimately turned out to be. Um, and it is a phenomenal tool. But what the tool actually does for me is it gives me more time to be actually coaching them and not getting my data together, right? I don't have to listen to the calls, which take, even on fast speed, 30 minutes, right? I don't have to take down my notes and everything. I can still do that. But if I don't have time that particular week, we can go listen to a call that's in there and have a general framework that we start with, and we'll focus right on one thing, as opposed to me saying, I got to listen to this call so I totally understand, where the problems were. So that it gives me my time back to do what is really the important part of the coaching, is working with the team. So it's a phenomenal tool. Does it replace me, or eventually, you know, somebody that's going to replace me because I'm going to be doing something else in the agency? Um, it supplements what we do, but it just makes it so much more effective because it gives me so much data that would take me a full time job to get a tenth of the data, or maybe 1% of the data. This is like at our fingertips immediately, right? And that is such a great use of AI in my mind.
I'm glad to hear again. It's been helpful and powerful. And we want to end it with this. If someone wants to reach out to you, can they, and how?
Absolutely. If somebody wants to ask me any questions about this, or anything else, I love talking to people because I think it's great to share ideas. I always get something when I talk to people because I won't be afraid to ask questions. My email is Bill Doran, which is my first name, which is on the screen, and my last name, Bill Doran at Diamond Guard INS. So our name of the agency is Diamond Guard. So all one word, diamondguardins.com. If they want to send me an email there, they can do that. I'll reply. If they want to call me, I give my phone number. It's 214-985-9551, which is a direct number for me. If you have any questions about anything we talked about today, I'd be happy to visit with you.
Fantastic. Bill, I appreciate you a lot. I really enjoyed this conversation. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. And until next time. So bye for now.
All right. Thanks, Michael.